The wait is finally over. After one of the longest off-seasons in F1 history, 2020 is ready to get going with back-to-back races in Austria. The disrupted 2020 campaign will be like no other in Formula 1, with a mixed-up calendar, double-header races and some unexpected tracks making their way onto the schedule. So how will it all play out? We've put our F1 experts on the spot to answer 5 key questions about the new season. So have a listen to what Scott Mitchell, Edd Straw, Gary Anderson and Mark Hughes are expecting to see for this year, and then leave your answers to our questions in the comments. And if you enjoy this video and everything else we've been producing while there's been no racing going on, remember to like and subscribe so you can keep up with all the major talking points once the F1 season is finally up and running.
Well, my head says Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes are going to sweep to yet another Formula 1 title double, but what's a video being posted online about giving the haters something to comment on and disagree with? So I'm going to go with my heart and say that Max Verstappen's going to give it a really good go this year, and maybe we're going to see a bit of a mix-up. So Max for the driver's title, Mercedes for the constructors.
I can't look beyond Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. They've won 6 World Championships on the bounce. Lewis Hamilton is an all-time great. They were very quick in pre-season testing. It's a team at the top of its game. We've got rule stability. Everything points to the Silver Arrows.
For the Drivers' Champion, I think Max Verstappen's the man for the job. It does depend a bit on how Red Bull and Honda start the season, because really that's what they suffered with most in the last few seasons. They didn't start strong enough. They finished really strongly, but this year they need to start strongly, and I'm sure that Max Verstappen can take the fight to anybody as far as pure performance is concerned. When it comes to the Constructors Championship, you know, Mercedes should have the might of their 2 cars pushing hard and scoring points in all races, but they are falling apart a little bit. You know, there's changes going on within that team that we don't know about yet. So if Red Bull can start the season strongly, Honda start the season strongly, and Albon can start the season strongly, scoring some points, they could be in competition for the Constructors' Championship as well.
Okay, the champion, Lewis Hamilton, best driver and the best team. Not always at every single race, but for enough of the races, I think, for it to be the determining factor. Almost certainly pushed hard by Max Verstappen and Red Bull, but I think over the balance of the season, yeah, Lewis and Mercedes, another double.
Yes, Class B, you know, that's the $1 million question. I mean, I have to say that Racing Point, when they were Force India, showed that they have the ability to achieve that over the season. They're a really good race team. They go racing on a Sunday. You know, a lot of teams don't do that. They actually they have an organisation, but they're not just pure racers. And Racing Point really are. It's the ex-Jordan group, and I think it's they can do it again. They're starting the season with the what's called the Pink Mercedes. But in reality, you know, in testing, it was very quick. It's their car. They've built it. They've designed it. Yes, it might be a clone of the last year's Mercedes, but it's a very good starting point for them. So my money would go to Racing Point to be closing up a little bit on the top 3 and heading that midfield.
Racing Point, with its pink Mercedes, was the talk of the midfield runners during pre-season testing, and I see no reason for that to change. We know how good Sergio Perez is. He's a massively consistent performer, outstanding executor of races, and I think that some problems that have arisen for McLaren and Renault could hold them back a little bit. So yeah, let's go for Racing Point. Really good team. They know how to lead that midfield pack.
Class B is an interesting one this year. I suspect Racing Point is going to have the fastest car with their infamous pink Mercedes. Maybe that 4th place in the championship, maybe McLaren's more heavily favoured for that. They've got a stronger driver lineup, and I think the performance of the 2 cars is going to be, of those 2 cars, is going to be closely enough matched that the driver lineup will be telling in the end. So yeah, perhaps Perez in the drivers and McLaren in the constructors.
I think McLaren are going to make it back-to-back Class B victories. I don't necessarily think that means they'll have the 4th fastest car. I think it's going to be a really tight midfield fight, but I suspect they will have the 4th best driver pairing in terms of points scored. So I think they'll be quick enough to see off Renault, and I think combined Carlos Sainz Jr. and Lando Norris are going to do enough to outgun Sergio Perez and Lance Stroll, even though the Racing Point will be fundamentally faster.
I'm going for Lando Norris as the biggest surprise. That might seem odd because he had a good season last year, but I feel like Carlos Sainz justifiably hogged the headlines. But Lando Norris was stronger than his points tally in comparison suggested. He's the long-term bet for McLaren because, of course, Carlos Sainz is off. He's in his second season. Very, very quick. If he can refine some of that speed, he's going to be a real force.
Biggest surprise, I'm going to go with, I think Sebastian Vettel is going to have a deeply impressive season. I think he's going to be driving with a freedom that he didn't have before. I think the resolution of those horrible conflicts between driving for himself and also within the constraints put upon him by the team is no longer there. And yes, I think that will lead to some flashpoints of controversy, but I think in terms of performance, he is going to have a great season, and I think that is going to be probably the big surprise of the season.
We've got used to Formula One having a Class A and a Class B over the last few years, but I reckon this year the Racing Point looks really good, and at some times, some races, it's going to have a bit of a Class A minus, Class B plus kind of feel, whatever the best way of putting that is, and that means a driver as quick and assured as Checo Perez is definitely going to stand on the podium in 2020, and it will be on merit. Not to say his last ones didn't count, but it means that he will score a podium finish in a race without ridiculous circumstances conspiring to create the opportunity.
Obviously, the Ferrari situation will unfold as the season starts. Charles Leclerc, obviously, without a doubt, very talented, but then so is Sebastian Vettel. Sebastian Vettel's in his last year at Ferrari. Nothing to lose. It might be his last year in Formula One even. Nothing to lose whatsoever. So he's going to be out to prove a point. He's the man that needs to be proven to prove that he deserves the money he was paid, deserves the money to be paid for the future, and deserves that drive. So I think the competition between those is going to go right down to the wire, and I think Seb might teach Charles Leclerc a lesson or two on how you should do it whenever the push comes to shove.
It's got to be Sebastian Vettel's farewell tour. Whichever way it goes, whichever way you try and cut it, he's either going to bow out of Ferrari and maybe Formula One altogether with a whimper, or he's going to go into retirement or slip into the midfield after a brilliant season in which he really takes the fight to Charles Leclerc. And in either case, I'm going to be massively disappointed because it's either an unfitting end to a great career or it's a sign of exactly what Ferrari and maybe even Formula One are going to be losing.
The biggest disappointment has already happened, hasn't it? It's the pandemic and the effect that has had upon the season.
I think it could be McLaren. I mean, they're obviously in fairly serious difficulties at the moment. Financially, Formula One is in a serious problem at the moment because obviously there's a lot less races, so you can't rely on the income at the moment from these races. So they are going to have to raise money. They've been very public about having to raise money, and in reality, for a company like that to be as public as they are means that they are really struggling. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them struggling to raise that money and having to bring in some outside finance, and that will change the whole nature of McLaren. We have to wait and see.
I hope I'm wrong on this, but I fear Ferrari will be the big disappointment. We want as many teams as possible challenging for the championship. Ferrari is one of only 3 that can realistically do that, and based on what we've seen so far, they're not quite going to be there. Let's hope they do better than expected, but I think we're just going to be disappointed again with Ferrari in 2020. F1 seasons are always remembered for what happens on track, so for all the off-track disruption, I think it'll be Lewis Hamilton winning his record-equalling 7th World Championship. We once thought that matching Michael Schumacher's tally would be impossible, but Lewis Hamilton has the means, motive and opportunity to do just that.
How will the year be remembered? That's a really tricky one because, hopefully we'll have a good season. Hopefully we'll have a lot of good racing. These back-to-back races at each circuit might be very good. But I think it probably be remembered for the season that nearly didn't happen. And might not happen yet even. We're going to go to start the season in Europe, and obviously it depends upon this COVID-19 whether it does keep diminishing or whether it starts to get a new influx of cases. We won't know until the racing starts. Formula One is a worldwide championship. There's people coming from all over the world to compete in it. So anywhere in the world that starts to have a problem will affect Formula One. So I think really and truthfully it will be remembered as a season that just nearly didn't happen.
How will it be remembered? I think it'll be remembered for the remarkable way in which Formula One somehow coupled together a fantastic season from a situation that looked absolutely dire, and I think it will go down as a season of great credit for the sport.
I think 2020 is going to be remembered as the season with the asterisk next to it, and not necessarily because it's not going to count or that there'll be doubt against whoever ends up winning the title, but just because it's such a special season. It's unique, it's weird in a way. We're going to have a crazy run of races, we're going to have some double headers. Who knows what the season's going to be at the end, but one thing's for sure, it's just going to go down in history as one of, if not the most bizarre season in Formula One.
So that's what our experts think. Now it's your turn. Leave your answers to our questions in the comments, and remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel. F1 2020 is finally here, and we hope you're as excited as we are to see what happens on track.